Okay, here is the clock spring from the Honda Civic that we did, and I just want to show you guys how this thing actually works. So you have these contact that's plugged into the steering wheel. So on your steering wheel you have those buttons where you can adjust your volume up and down and answer your phone, cruise control, all that good stuff. So the controls actually go through here and comes out on the other side through these ribbons. So as you turn the steering wheel, this thing will turn along with the steering wheel. And then the controls will go through here and goes into the car itself. So over time, this piece of plastic slash contact thing will actually start to develop little creases in it and it'll break that connection. So this is what will cause a airbag lag on these Hondas. So it's a quick update on the inside of a clock spring. Today we're working on a 2015 Honda Civic. Customer came in with a airbag light on. We did some testing on it and then found out the clock spring or the cable reel is bad in this car. It's opening up every once in a while when he turns the steering wheel. So we're going to have a video on how to replace the cable reel or the clock spring in the 2015 Honda Civic. Here's me removing the negative battery cable when working with airbag. That's what you always want to do. And first step is to take off the cover on the bottom of the steering wheel to gain access to the connectors that goes to the airbag. And here's me removing both of the T30 screws that's on the side. There's one on the left side and there's one on the right side that holds the airbag in place to the steering wheel. So these screws right here, they're really soft and you will strip them if you don't have the bit in all the way, so be careful. If you strip them, you're in trouble. So take them out, and then at this point the battery is already disconnected, so you can put the key into the ignition to aid yourself to turn the steering wheel. That's what I did there. Otherwise the steering wheel will be locked if it's not, if the key is not in the ignition. So here's a view of the connector. You pull down on the black tab and it comes apart, and there's a ground wire that also connects to the airbag, and there's a tab on that connector too, and it takes a little bit to get that little black piece out of the holder. Once it's out, you just take it loose and the airbag should come right out. And make sure you always set it down so the airbag's facing up. So here's me finding the center point of the steering wheel. Make sure the wheels are straight ahead, and then unplug this white connector that goes into the SRS reel, and then remove the 14mm that holds the steering wheel into the column. So once the bolt is removed, give that steering wheel a good wiggle and it will come right off. Make sure you get that little yellow connector, feed over the little hump, and they'll come out. Now you could pop up the top cover to the steering column, and you can see the two screws in here. So once you get those two screws out, there's one more screw on the bottom of the steering column, and that screw is different from the rest of them, so you can't mix those up. So once those are out, you just leave the cover dangling, and the cable reel itself, it just clips in onto the steering column. So once you get the connectors disconnected, it will just pop right off. It's held in by three little tabs. There's one on the left, there's one on the right, and then there's one on the top. Once you get that off, here's the view of the steering wheel sensor. Make sure you transfer that straight over to your new cable reel or the clock spring. And do not turn it at all, just transfer it straight over. And on the new cable reel itself, it will have a yellow tab on there. You need to break that off before you install it into the car, otherwise the steering wheel won't go on there. That yellow tab is there just to hold the clock spring in the center position during shipping and their storage. So here's a view of the steering wheel sensor going back onto the cable reel, and then I was pointing at the yellow tab you have to break off, and then you get all the connectors plugged back in. Make sure you don't leave anything out. And at this point you could assemble the lower cover. The lower cover, make sure you get it over the keyhole straight, otherwise the cover becomes really hard to put back on and you might be fighting it for a little bit. So I put the right side over first, make sure it's over the keyhole, put that one screw in, and then get the left side in, and then the bottom screw goes in last. The bottom screw should just go straight up. You should not have to fight this at all. If you're fighting this, that means something is off, and just take it off and look at it again. The bottom screw is kind of hard to get to, so I don't really have a good shot of it, but it's in there. Once that's done, you could take the steering wheel and put it back on. Make sure you feed the yellow connector over where that white connector comes out, so you don't pinch that wire, because I had to take it back off right there because it wasn't over the right hump. So the steering wheel will only go back in one position, and these things are splined, and there's a mark on the dot itself, so you can't really miss that. And then once that's in, you put that 14 millimeter back in, and then just tighten it down. Once that's tight, you're ready to put the airbag back into the steering wheel. So make sure you feed the yellow connector down towards the bottom of that hole so nothing pinches. And then once that's in, the airbag should kind of just sit in there really nicely. And at this point, you grab the two T30s we took out earlier and put them back in. And make sure you start these by hand. You do not want to use any power tools on these, because you could mess those heads up. And do not tighten them to the point where you can't take them back out, because another person might need to service this at a later date. But do tighten them down to, so the airbag don't just fall out. So always hand tools on the airbag. And here's me rotating the steering wheel to the right so I could get a good access to get all the connectors back in, and get them back in through their little holder. They have little humps on the bottom, the cover hole for the connectors to go back in. And then here's a good shot of the lower cover going back on. That will just snap in place, and at this point you should be pretty much done. Now take the key back out of the ignition if you have it in, and then go reconnect the negative terminal to the battery. At this point you can start up the car and make sure you turn your steering wheel lock to lock. Make sure nothing is binding. Make sure your steering controls are working right, and hook up the scan tool and do a steering wheel sensor relearn on this to find the neutral position, and take it out for a good test drive. Make sure everything's working right on the steering wheel. Here's another happy customer. If you have any questions on this repair itself, give me a call at my shop. We're located exactly about a mile down the street from the Big Chicken off of 41. So like the video. Thank you.